Okay, let's have a look at short-run costs. So what we know about the economic short run is that it's the period of time in which there's at least one fixed factor of production. And what that means is that it's difficult for a firm if it wants to expand. And the reason is that in order to expand, you have to add more and more of a variable factor to units of a fixed factor. So we add more and more workers to, say, a fixed amount of land or a fixed amount of capital. And whilst initially that's probably fine, because we can engage in teamwork, that type of stuff. So if I add one worker, then we can show it using marginal product. Suppose that's workers, and this is extra output. Then when I add my first worker, maybe they add 10. The second worker, though, because they can work, they can maybe specialise and work together with the first one, maybe they add another 12, meaning that total output rises to 22. And maybe the third one, they can really divide their labour, and it adds 14. But eventually, of course, as we add more and more workers, what's going to happen is that output is going to increase more and more slowly. So whilst that's plus 14, when we add a fourth worker, maybe they only add another 10. The fifth worker now is running out of fixed factors, adds another 7. The sixth one, maybe only another 4, and so on. So we end up with a marginal product, MPL, marginal product to labour curve, looks like that. Up to this point, we have increasing returns to the variable factor. After that point, between 3 and 7 workers, we have diminishing returns to the variable factor. And after 7, we have negative returns. And it's after 7 that when we add an extra worker, they're actually getting in the way. So if I was to plot total product along here, so again, that's workers and that's output, up to this point, it's rising more and more quickly, like that. Up to there, it's still rising, but more and more slowly, until after the 7th worker, total product then starts to fall. So what we're interested in really, though, is the impact on costs. So what we've got, the key in the short run, is we've got, and I'm trying to keep this, focused on the most important things. In the short run, we have two main types of costs. We've got variable costs and fixed costs. Variable costs, they rise in total as output rises. And the classic example of a variable cost is something like the ink for this pen, something like that, because the more output, the more ink we need. Fixed costs, they're not necessarily literally fixed, but they're fixed with respect to output. So these are costs where an increase in output does not increase this type of cost. So this is things like interest on loans or rent for your property and so on. It doesn't matter how many pens I make, the rent is the same, the interest on the loan from the bank is the same. Although that doesn't mean that rent can't change. My landlord could renegotiate my rent and so on. But it's still a fixed cost because it doesn't vary with respect to the number of pens that are made. So if we have a look at variable costs, then within that, the most important variable cost is what's called marginal cost. A marginal cost is so important because it tells us whether or not it's worth making an extra unit. So what I want to know is, if I make this pen, how much extra does it cost? If I have increasing returns, remember what that means is that each worker is more efficient, effectively, than the one before. So if we saw a minute ago that if the first worker added 10, and the second one added 12, and the third one added 14, effectively the cost of those extra units is starting to go down. Suppose I paid workers £100. The first one, they make 10 units, each unit costs £10. The second worker added 12 units, well, the cost of each of those units is £8.33. The third worker added 14 units, we still pay them £100, the cost of their units is about £7.15 or something, So when we have increasing returns, what's happening is that marginal cost is falling because each worker is more efficient than the one before. If we look eventually at the point where we have diminishing returns, then what that means is that each worker is becoming less efficient than the one before. And now what's going to happen is that the marginal cost, the cost of each extra unit, is going to start to rise. And that's the reason why your marginal cost curve is that classic, kind of Nike swoosh shape. Yeah, so if we now put output down here instead of workers, so that's just the number of pens that are made, here's money up here. What we can see is that the cost of the first 10 pens was £10, the next one's a bit less, next one's a bit less. But eventually, we get diminishing returns. So up to this point, we have increasing returns to the variable factor. But what we know is that after that point, we have diminishing returns to the variable factor. So, we're interested, so what we're then saying is, well, okay, so that's our marginal cost. The trouble with marginal cost, though, is that it only tells us about this single unit, this one. What I also want to know is, on average, how much have my costs been per pen? Yeah, so if I make 3 pens, if I tell you that the third pen costs £7, well, okay, fine. But what about the first 2? Therefore, what I'm going to need is I'm also going to need to say, well, marginal costs are a type of variable cost. Yeah, so if I take the marginal cost of the first unit and the marginal cost of the second and the marginal cost of the third, I suppose that was 10, that was 8, and that was 7, then I'd have £25. What is that £25? That £25 is called total variable cost. It should be called total marginal cost, but it isn't. But marginal costs are obviously a type of variable cost because it's showing the extra cost of each unit. So to find average variable cost, what we've got to do is take the marginal cost of the first unit plus the marginal cost of the second plus the marginal cost of the third, and divide by 3 units. And that will give me the average variable cost of 3 units. So if we look at what that looks like on a diagram, then what you'll see is that marginal cost is like that. And let's suppose that's the first unit there, and that costs £10. At that stage, obviously, my average variable cost is also £10, because it's £10 divided by 1. If I make a second unit, the marginal cost of that unit looks like about £4. So my average variable cost is 10 plus 4 divided by 2. That's 7. If I make a third unit, that costs, say, 3. My marginal cost is 10 plus 7, 10 plus 7, plus 10 plus 4 plus 3, which is 17, divided by 3 is about 6. So what's happening is your average variable cost is going down like that. And as long as the next unit costs less than the current average, then the average will fall like that. So as long as the marginal is below the average falls. As soon as the marginal comes above the average, then the average starts to rise. So we have that classic U-shaped average variable cost curve. Now, to fully understand short-run costs, we also have to think about fixed costs. What we know about fixed costs is that they're fixed, with respect to output. So if that's output and that's cost, and my fixed costs are £1,000, suppose I decide that I want to do a revision tour or something, and I hire a hall for £1,000, then regardless of the number of students who come, I've paid £1,000. But the cost per student, that's average fixed cost, that depends on the number of students. If only one person comes to my revision session, then that was very expensive for me. It's £1,000 per student. But if his mate comes, when she comes up, then we've now got 1,000 divided by 2, that's 500 quid. If each of them brings a mate, and I've got 4, it's now only £250 per student. So average fixed cost, it falls like that. Obviously, it's never going to quite reach 0 because we're dividing £1,000 by something, but it falls and gets closer and closer to 0 without ever quite reaching it. So we spread those fixed costs over a larger number of units. So if we now combine that, then what we end up with is something that looks like this. So what we got is we've got average variable cost looks like that. Average fixed cost looks like that. So to find average cost or average total cost, we simply add them together. We simply say, well, if I make 10 units, the fixed cost was £7, the variable cost was £13, therefore my average cost is £20. And because I'm adding a smaller and smaller amount on, so their fixed costs are only £2, so my average cost would be that. What you end up with is, average cost and average variable cost, get closer and closer together, and that gap there between them, that is your average fixed cost, because I'm just adding that onto that, to find the average total cost curve. A marginal cost, it always goes through the minimum point of each of those curves. So if I was to add marginal cost on, it would look like that. So that's your classic, set of short-run marginal average costs. Only just over 10 minutes. So I'll do a quick total cost curve. So marginal cost looks like that. So what we said is that up to that point, each unit is costing less than the one before, but it's still costing something. So total variable cost rises more slowly. After that point, each unit costs more and more and more. So total variable cost rises more and more quickly. That's costs, that's output. Fixed cost, we know is fixed. So it looks like that. And therefore, my total costs, they start here. If I make no units, I've still got to pay my fixed costs. So even if output's 0, I've still got costs of £1,000. But then to find total cost, we just add on £1,000 to total variable cost. Now, except that was pretty fast. And if you're looking for more detail, then I'll put some links to some more detailed videos, that go through it a bit more slowly.